and welcome to the podcast series, A Burden for the Times, a conversation on culture and race. I'm your host, Adrian Burden, and I'm with my brothers, Aaron and Anton, to tackle some crucial topics in order to have some clarifying conversations about race. Thank you so much for joining us for part 2 of The Reality of Police Brutality. Let's jump right into the conversation. There are some people who would say that what we are doing right now is really aiding the problem. All you're doing, see, Aaron, you telling that story, you're putting it in people's heads. And so therefore, look, you're using that emotion to be able to then emit a response. And so Anton, the reason I'm asking you is because sometimes you can see through that emotion, see and start putting factual things together in your opinion. And again, this is going to be mud on my face, I guess, as even asking the question in the beginning. But do you feel that we're aiding in the problem by talking about it at such length?
I don't think so. No, I think this is going to be somewhat of a longer response. I'm actually going to read a quote from James Baldwin because that's actually what everything made me think about. And again, I do not agree with everything James Baldwin has said or done, but I do think he loved black people and tried to help them. The quote that I will give is, I don't know what most white people in this country feel, he said, but I only conclude what they feel from the state of their institutions. I don't know if white Christians hate Negroes or not, but I know we have a Christian church that is white and a Christian church that is black.
Wow.
I know, as Malcolm X once put it, the most segregated hour in American life is high noon on Sunday. That says a great deal for me about a Christian nation. It means I can't afford to trust most white Christians, and I certainly cannot trust the Christian church. I don't know whether the labor unions and their bosses really hate me. That doesn't matter, but I know I'm not in their union. I don't know whether the real estate lobby has anything against black people, but I know that real estate lobby is keeping me in the ghetto. I don't know if the Board of Education hates black people, but I know the textbooks they give my children to read and the schools we have to go to. Now, this is the evidence. You want me to take an act of faith, risking myself, my wife, my sister, my children on some idealism you assure me exists in America, which I have never seen. And to me, that is exactly what that makes me feel. Wow. I cannot prove to you what if this is racist or not. I believe that it is. I'm sure you can make a coherent argument that it is not. However, the evidence, in my opinion, as I said earlier, is in your court, because we can all agree that it's been racist. It is on you to prove to me that it's not anymore. And right now, that's not what I've seen.
That is a powerful quote. In fact, that James Baldwin quote. Now, when you were reading that quote, you said that James Baldwin was the one who quoted Malcolm X for saying about high noon being the most segregated hour, correct?
Yes.
Oh, so it's funny because I didn't realize that when pastors were telling me that line, a lot of times they probably didn't know that they were quoting Malcolm X.
No, I doubt it very seriously.
That's surely a King quote, isn't it? I'm sure. Anyway, that's neither here nor there, but that's interesting. But wow, that's a powerful quote. Now, is that in Baldwin's book, or where did you get that?
He actually has a debate that you can watch on YouTube.
Okay.
It's him against William Buckley, and he says that in there. And there's also a Dick Cavett interview that he brings those points up on.
We've taken great time to be able to talk about at great length what exactly we find to be the issues and the problems that we are deemed to be racial and perspective that relate to the police department. So let's talk to those. What's our suggestions then in this discussion, this final discussion? And as we discuss it, though, I really want us to take our attention to those in leadership, because that a lot of the people, whether they realize it or not, their listeners are leaders in some way, leading their home. They might only have a couple of people that, that they might be the ones that they lead inside their office or whatever, but that they're in a position of leadership. And so what would our suggestions be to those in leadership? Let me first give this illustration to kind of set the tone to the reason why I believe this is so important. I give an illustration because that's just what I do. And so I think of it as I'm driving down the road. If I drive and when I rent a car, sometimes I can rent one of those little cars, like one of those little compact cars where they're really cheap and I can get back and forth to the meeting real quick. And so I can do that. Now, if I get to Eaton or whatever in that little car and I drift over to the side of the road, I have a good amount of recovery time because the car is so small. I can ride in my lane and go wee left and right before I even hit the shoulder. I can stay, and here's the word, in my liberties. I can stay in my liberties and not cause too much harm or destruction or make anybody nervous. Now, when I drove an F550 pulling a 40-foot trailer that was behind it, you can eat while you do that. And the thing is when you do that, you have that same amount of liberty that car has. It's just that because I'm carrying more, I'm able to accomplish more because I'm moving a fifth wheel trailer. I am essentially moving a house down the road in a F550 truck. So I'm able to do more and carry more. But with that responsibility of carrying more down the road, what you find now is that when I move left or right, I can move still within my liberty, but I make people nervous. If I ride on that white line on the left side and somebody's in the other, they're looking at me going, whoa, big fella, you better go to the other side. Or because I can't blame them, even though I'm staying in my liberty, I can't blame them for being nervous that I'm coming close to their side. Because if I come off my tracks and if I come off, it's not like that little Nissan Versa that came off my tracks. Yes, they might have to brake a little bit hard and let me get through because I drifted. But if I come over there with my F550, I'm taking them out. And so I look at it in my sense of leadership as you come a little bit higher is kind of the idea where you're driving that F550 and that thing. You're able to accomplish more. You'll be able to do more as you go down the road of life. But with that responsibility of leadership comes also the fact that, wait a second, like when I make a mistake, when I get off track in doing certain things, I can cause great damage. And because of that, I think it's important for us to address leaders and leadership to understand that, yes, if you're a kid that's 10 years old and you lie and you make a mistake, yes, there's consequences. But when you're a leader leading a great congregation of people and you lie, there's more repercussions that take place. So with that being said, we understand the gravity and the importance of leadership. We must then say, all right, what is our suggestions to those with power, to those with leadership, especially as it relates to this discussion with policing, police brutality, or in general, how do we see it as a whole of people interacting with groups of people? So, Aaron, we'll start with you. What's your suggestion? We don't want to just leave hopeless. We also want to leave with some help.
I'm going to say, I honestly believe I'm going to put mine as humility. Like, let's, as leaders, be humble. Look at the other people around us. And I say humble for two things, like humble that we would stop and listen, and we don't have the pride to always believe we're right, or like we're joking about the good, if Captain America is punching them, that it's always that he's always punching the bad guy and they deserve to be punched if Captain's punching them. Then we have to bring humility to the table and say, you know what? Everybody who's in authority is not always right. There are policemen that we're going to wait and see. You know what? Is that from the video, from everything, it looks like a bad call. And we're going to be able to call it. You know what? This person is wrong. And we have to do that in everything. So I know we keep, and I know myself have kind of kept bouncing back and forth to never directly hit the police officers because I don't want to sound like I'm bashing policemen. So I kind of bring other illustrations to bring it back in. But I wanted to say, I think humility all the way around, humility to the people who have been hurt. So I'm calling myself to humility to when I feel like I've been wronged, to give the same grace that God's given me to other people. And then humility and leadership, as in, if you're a leader who leads people, whether you're a pastor, once again, because this is what comes to mind, or you're a business owner, a leader, if you're a parent, right, parenting your kids through these things, humility is going to be the thing. It's not a black versus white. It's not a us versus them. We're going to humble ourselves and look at other people and give them empathy. I'm going to go with this, right, for my illustration, is I struggle with gout, right? So every now and then I get a pain in my foot that is unbearable for a couple of days. And it is ridiculous. I'm crawling around the house and drinking crazy tart cherry juice.
I'm there now, too.
And so I guess it's hereditary. So Anton's been blessed with it, too. But in that moment, I'm telling you, I have prayed for more people with chronic that I know that live in chronic pain than I ever have, because I felt it. Like when my foot comes and starts hurting unbelievably, and all I can do is roll off the couch and roll back on the couch and roll back off the couch and roll back on the couch because it hurts so bad. I was thinking in the people of my church that have cancer, that have other diseases that cause them chronic pain. And I'm telling you, I was laying on the couch, selfishly praying for myself, and then by the grace of God, praying for other people because I'm like, Lord, if they have to live with this all the time, then, Lord, they need your help. And so when it came to it, but it humbled me once I had put myself in somebody else's position. Like, I just can't get up and walk to the store. I can't get up and literally walk to my office at church without crutches. It makes me think of other people. So I'm going to say the answer to some of these things with police brutality and even us looking at all of it is I'm going to take it straight from Ben Watson out of his book, Under Our Skin. It's a pride issue. And I think God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble.
Anytime that humility is involved, you find that God's hand and God's blessing is going to be there. Anton, what do you think? Suggestions to those in leadership? Obviously, we're speaking specifically to those in the, policing and authority, but just in general, we want to just give practical principles there.
So first, I want to say that I love what Aaron said. Everything about that's great. I would add to the fact that I think we have to learn how to respect without worshiping. Because even what Aaron just said, I will say the only thing I would slightly disagree with is I think we get into worship when we're afraid to say someone or a group of people has done something bad. And to me, that's the conversation. People tiptoe with the police. And again, I don't think it helps them. I think, honestly, for the people who are anti-police, the tiptoeing is what gives them credence. If the police are doing something bad, we have to be able to say they're doing something bad. That is not disrespectful. To say I disagree with you or that this was immoral is not disrespectful in any way. But I think we have somewhat of a worshiping relationship toward the police, where that we are not allowed to say anything negative about them. And I don't think that's a healthy place to be. Like I said, I put it in the same vein as America as a Christian nation. This is just deniability. When no one can say anything bad about you, you are being worshipped. Whether it's the country, whether it's a group of people, whether it's a politician, we have to be able to say bad things about any group of people. I don't care if and again, I'm not talking disrespectful. I am not saying go around belittling people who have one of the hardest jobs on the planet. That is not at all what I'm implying. What I am implying is if you see a police officer doing something that is not his job, we have to be able to say something as a country. Secondly, I would just say that we are, and I guess that's how I kind of interpreted the question, I think we are all leadership when it comes to police because we're literally their boss. And again, that's why the worship bothers me. They work for us. They protect and serve us. And if we can't say anything to the people who are protecting and serving us, or if they're not protecting and serving us, they're literally not doing their job. So I that's my only, I would say, slight pushback is that I don't think we can continue. And I think it would help everyone if we took pretty much everyone off these pedestals, your politicians, your police, whoever is currently sitting on the pedestal, unless it's Jesus, go ahead and knock them down, put them with everybody else because that's where they belong. They're people. I think we have too many false gods. And I think for conservatives, police are kind of on that list. So if I were going to say, I would say vote, because a lot of this is because of, honestly, lack of engagement. You know, we grew up in a town where with Ralph Thomas was our sheriff, and he was a criminal for our entire lives and ended up going to jail. And he kept getting reelected year after year. And then people are like, well, what's wrong with the police system? Like, you voted for a criminal for decades. So I think, honestly, those are, I would say, the biggest points I would say.
Okay, I'm going to go broad and talk about a suggestion in those in leadership, but then we're going to get specific in just a moment about it. I think, and it sounds like a very broad thing to say in 1 Corinthians 13, but the principles that's being taught there about charity. I just think that there's some groups of people that we just look at them, and after we just look at them, it's almost like we categorize them by the worst part of them. And then some groups of people, we look at them as a whole, and then we categorize them by their best. And I don't know why that is. So in my world, in ministry, there's a lot of evangelists and there's a lot of pastors. Well, there's few evangelists. There's a lot more. There'd be way more pastors percentage wise. And what is interesting this is my view, this has nothing to do with the whole race and culture debate, is if a church has a bad experience with an evangelist at any point in the ministry, they just don't like all evangelists because they had an evangelist come to their church and he did something but dumb and it probably happened and there's no way to defend it. But because of that, they don't like any evangelist. In fact, they will never have an evangelist come to their church again. However, that same church had to go through 3 pastors to get to the pastor they have now. And since they got to that same pastor, 3 pastors, it's not like they dismiss all pastors. It's not like it's sometimes you can separate the fact that Pastor Bob was not a good guy, but now Pastor John is a good guy. Like it's somehow evangelist so-and-so was a bad guy. Evangelist so-and-so is a good guy. It's like the word evangelist gets thrown out with the bathwater, to some extent. And so I don't think that's really the practicing in 1 Corinthians 13 because you're grouping in this entire category of people. And like I said, we pick and choose. And so like Anton was saying about respecting and versus worshiping and stuff is you look at one area specifically of the police department, like they can do no wrong. So therefore, for some reason, in some people's mind, like if they shot him, had a reason, can't do wrong. Or some people look at the opposite, which I know there's some in our audience, they can do no right. Everything they do is defiled and corrupt from the beginning. And I think that's unfair. Charity believes the best. Charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not, vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up. You go through all this list that you find that when love interacts inside of a person's life, what it does, and to those in leadership specifically, is you can healthily look and celebrate the good and then dismiss that which is wrong. Because I would say this even happens in Black culture. It's like some people say, well, you're just talking about a collective group of people. Like in February, y'all want me talked as one group of people. And now when you have a podcast, you're talking about how your individual experiences, how we should treat you individually, or however the argument may go down. I would say that people then can celebrate the fact of culturally that the things that are neat about our culture and Black culture, but some people have a bad interaction with one white person or with one Black person, and what it does is it dismisses everything that anybody else happens to feel or do within that one society. So I would say that true love for a person will stop looking at individuals as lumps. We believe the best. Charity suffereth long and is kind. We do our best by God's grace and help to be able to see them as individuals as we go throughout and showing the love of Christ in and through, and not lumping people into big, just giant clumps of just groups of people, but as individuals. I think as leaders, that has to be to the top of our to-do list, because if Aaron, as a youth pastor, gets hurt by one teenager and lumps all teenagers in just one grouping of people and kind of treats them with that little chip on the shoulder to the next teenager, well, you're not going to lead the next teenager because you're not loving them as Christ would love them. So I think it's important for those in leadership. Now, specifically, though, how do we see then this trickle out to the police department? So we have these broad topics: respecting and not respecting them, not worshiping them. We see humility. We see true love being displayed. Yes, these are great, banner topics, I guess you would say. So the question then comes down is, how is I, as a Black man who I am, living the world I do, especially speak to this, Anton, starting with you, how can I then support the police, support what I feel is the right, support what I feel they're doing well, but not seemingly that I have, turned into a person who feels that they do no wrong. It's almost like, seems like if I have a thin blue line on my car, then suddenly I hate Black people. Sometimes it can be interpreted. I know it seems like I'm speaking very broadly, but I think that sometimes is the interpretation, is practically speaking. So how do you see that, Anton? Supporting the Black, support police, how does those two things interact with each other?
I think they go hand in hand. I think a lie that's perpetrating is that those two things don't go hand in hand. The only thing that really, I should say, what supports both of those things is the truth. If you actually want the truth, both those things go hand in hand. If you're genuinely concerned about Black America or about police brutality, you won't be against body cams. You won't be against the investigation. See, and that always gets me when someone's angry with an investigation. An investigation works out. I mean, let's be honest. Police are doing investigations on police. The police are going to get the benefit of the doubt. That is, I mean, if you believe that it's not true, then I mean, they're typically going to get the best defense possible. If you actually want the truth, you'll care about the history. The thing that concerns me is, again, just like what we were talking about earlier, is when people don't want the truth. And when people are going to side with police for no reason or going to side against the police for no reason. If you're actually at all an arbiter of truth, someone who genuinely is just trying to find what's best for this country, I don't think these things conflict in the least. I think, again, you brought up the thin blue line and things of that nature. I think the issue with organizations or ideas like that is that not only are they divisive, they go back to this worship mentality that is just, it's odd. Because okay, you're a guy who works, and again, I'm not just saying this to be disrespectful, but you're a guy who's an architect. Your obsession with a thin blue line is bizarre. It seems misplaced. Like, again, you say, well, what about Black Lives Matter? I'm black. And again, I'm not a member of Black Lives Matter, but it's obvious what my, if you want to say, affiliation would be. If someone were saying Black lives don't matter and you're black, you would immediately have skin in the game. If you're a guy who has no absolute thing to do with the police,
nicely done.
You have 15 signs. That's odd. I think that may be something else going on that we should look into. So whenever we get to a worship mentality, worship of anything other than Jesus, A, is a sin, and B, blinds your eyes to anything. No one ever sees flaws in things they worship. So you can't actually tell me you're looking for truth if you worship the police. It doesn't make any sense.
That's a good point. Aaron, supporting the blacks. Sorry. Let's try it again. Aaron, going for you, supporting the police and being black. Sometimes it seems as that those two don't jive together. What say you?
I'm gonna say they do, and I'm going to have to go right along with what Anton's saying, but I'm going to add a little bit to it and say that I think that the police department has a little bit of a PR problem. So I don't know what it looks like, but I think they need, maybe it's the police, maybe it's the media. I don't know. Our pastor is a chaplain of the police department where I live here in Flint Township. And so like we've had conversations, and I don't know what it needs to happen, but we need to start celebrating wins instead of always showing the police doing the bad things. Because I'm going to say, like, right now, police don't have the best rep when we start looking at everything. And so listen to me out here, okay? So when all you see is body cam footage of police shooting other people, when all you see is your shows on television that show the police officer on the side of the thing beating information out of a suspect, when you see those things, it doesn't go in a positive light. But I'm telling you, I know the Flint Township Police do a lot of good things. Like, I hear about them because I know people on the force. So I'm saying, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if they need a new marketing director of the police departments of America. But I think we have to start celebrating wins. And so whether that's the media's fault, it may be the media may help to this, right? When a police does something bad, hey, throw it out there. But I think the other thing is, I know there's some genuinely good policemen that love the people of this community. And I think that needs to be celebrated. So I think Andy Stanley always says, you get what you celebrate. And so I think we have to go to a point where we can find ways to celebrate the good things. And so I know for myself, every policeman I try to see, I try to tell them I thank them for their service. And hopefully they know from the black community, I'm thankful for them. I say, hey, I know you got a hard job. Thanks so much for what you do. Because I want them to be able to know, like, right, their support here. And so I think on a practical level, black people are going to have to show humility and just walk up and, hey, we love you. But I think on the police end, there's going to have some kind of way to show the good things. Because we know that it means something, because how many times have you seen a viral video of a white cop playing basketball with some kids in the hood, and everybody's like, share, because obviously we need more of it. Because if things that don't go viral, we see them all the time. We don't see squirrels eating nuts in the tree go viral because we see it all the time. So I think we have a time where we need to start capitalizing on the good things. The policemen that are good, let's capitalize on it. Let's show the good things and embrace them, if that makes sense.
All right. I see what you're saying. And that's a very practical, helpful tip, I would say, too, as well, to be able to how can the support be shown? I would say I have a practical tip about, supporting the police. And I would say that it's all about timing. And let me explain what I mean. Because some people say, Adrian, did you support the police after the George Floyd? I had phone calls from pastors and others, evangelists, who were like, now more than ever, Adrian, you have a little bit of a voice. You should be sharing these things. And I told them that actually the timing is not that good, man. Like when you're after the George Floyd situation and you have a rah, 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 shishkumbah for the police department at your church, like, I don't know if that's the best time, like, because you have something that, yes, there is one that has done bad, and no, that's not representative of all. But at the same time, you seem to kind of take what they just did and somehow put some approval on it, though you may not be intending to, placing approval upon it. And so I would say the timing is important for some people who have been tagged as being those who are the worshipers of the police department and the worshipers of even the things that they do that are wrong. And it really could come not that come to the heart, but it could come to the timing. And also say a practical aspect too, as well as what Aaron's saying, is a place to where you can praise the police department where there's no, fanfare, there's no specialness. You don't get a cookie because you went and talked to the police and did something for them. I think those acts of kindness that will never be known, those acts of kindness that will never be seen, the act of kindness of just sending a text to a law enforcement friend, and you don't have to take a selfie with the law enforcement friend. You don't have to post on Facebook that you just send out a mass text to all your law enforcement friends how awesome they are. Just do it, just support, and I think that that even though voices, that's the key, that's the buzzword I believe of our generation, is everyone has a voice. I have a voice, which is fine. Everybody use your voice, use it for the glory of God, but just everything you do in life does not have to have that amplification of a voice. Between you and the Lord, I believe it's a possibility, and the timing of it, I believe, is important. And just when the Lord leads you to do it, man, I think that's how you show support in different things. And I believe that as those things done in secret, those things that are just done for the glory of God. What does the Lord say? I can't remember the verse in Proverbs. Man, I should go back and look it up real quick. But it's the Lord who's going to advance it. The Lord's going to be the one to, push it forward, is when you just do it for him and do it then for his glory. So I believe that the support definitely can be made and definitely be found. And I would say, from this podcast as I support the police department. I thank God for the times that, things have happened. And when I get worried, yes, I will call 911. But I think that, Anton, I think you might have the quote of the day of the police are people, and about that respect and worship dynamic in that binary relationship, that it's important for us to see that what does the Bible say in Ephesus? I think it's in Ephesus. No, it's in Laodicea, the church of Laodicea. When Jesus says, whom I love, I rebuke and chasten. God says, I love you, Laodicea. I love you. But guess what? You got to love you. Don't mean I just don't say anything you're doing wrong. I rebuke, and the Bible says, I chasing you. I'm coming after you too. So I think that is to be seen of, hey, there's a genuine love can be also followed with a genuine rebuke that can come as well as needed. But again, just shout out to all those that are friends of mine. I don't want to start calling names because then I'll forget some of the ones that are, but as far as in law enforcement, and we respect the hard job you have. I know this isn't part of the outline, but I was just thinking to myself of all the training that could be possibly done. And maybe that's a podcast for another day, because we're expecting police to do so much, to be counselors and so many different things in their field of work that they have.
Exactly.
Anton, what do you speak to that? Because I know that you have definite opinions about that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think a large problem that I did not know if it was going to be dealt with in this podcast, the only reason I didn't, is that we do call police for everything. And that is, I would say it's a mint problem. We could talk about police reform and other things at a different time. But you cannot have in a society people who are people who are called to every situation, as if they're both psychologist, a SWAT team, counselor, friend. The same guy that you lost your cat should not be the same guy that, my dad was just kidnapped. The same guy should not come up for both those things. That logically makes no sense. So I know if any point, if I've said anything that would give the impression that I do not fully understand how difficult the job of policing is, I do. It is an incredible job. It is a difficult job. It is a thankless job. The only thing I am, again, trying to point out is that because it's all those things, it's still a choice that someone made to do. And you still are required to protect and serve. It's not because I do not understand the difficulty or respect it. It's just that is not a pass. And I think at times it seems that way. That because it's so hard, how would anyone know how to do it right? If the job's that hard and no one can figure out how to do it right, we need to change something because that job shouldn't exist. But yeah,
that's interesting because I think many times when I listen to in my world of pastors, it's like, well, when you sign up to be a pastor, you better be a construction guy. You better know how to be an architect. You better know how to be. I mean, it's a lot. And you're right. I think that some people have the understanding that, there's nothing wrong with taking this. And when a job seems overwhelming and people are leaving saying, I'm stressed out, we weren't supposed to be living in perpetual stress. That means that this was supposed to be split up. This wasn't meant for one individual, and things. So I guess that's for the identification of realizing that they've been almost given an impossible assignment in some cases and expect to perform off the charts on these nearly impossible assignments that have been given many times.
Can I add one more thing to that? Even thinking about the impossible assignments, even thinking about how they're weaponized. And so some of our police incidents are people calling the police for small matters that turn into something big. Okay, so let's talk about, I don't want to talk about a whole bunch of stuff that takes us for another long time, but like the bird watcher in the Central Park, like the police are being called because a black man is assaulting me when it's not really happening. But when you're a policeman to come on that scene, you've been put in a bad situation. You don't have the information. You don't have everything. And then all of a sudden somebody's essentially lied. Okay, so let's just call it a lie. But sometimes, like, I think about this all the time where I go run fishing and stuff like that. Like sometimes I go fishing where people run in like remote places, and I'm like, man, all somebody has to do is say, something happened in these woods. I saw a black man back there. And then I'm not gonna lie, it makes me nervous. Like when we start thinking about these things. But sometimes the police are put in bad situations because they really don't have all the information. Our culture and society knows, and once again can be a whole other podcast, but we know that when you say a black male, blah, 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 that means we're code red. Something bad is happening. And so when we start looking at this puts the policeman in a bad situation. So yeah, I never want to negate the situation that police are put into. When they come up to Trayvon Martin, somebody calls it there's a black kid with a gun. I know that I don't believe it may have been handled correctly, but I mean, if you don't know what situation you're coming into, that puts you in a bad spot. So that's why I was going to add to that.
All right, well, let's go ahead and cap this off with tips and tools. As we look here, we kind of tried during this last segment to be at least, give the hope and maybe some pointers and different things that we would pray would be helpful in this discussion. But let's just go for practical tools. And today I'm going to start off with my tool, tips and tools, and mine's going to be a tip. And mine, I'm going to end off my segment by saying that I think I'm not going to say it's trite in the least. I believe it's important is praying specifically and by name for those in leadership around you. We acknowledge it's a tough job. We acknowledge how hard it is. But do you have a prayer list of the names of the people in leadership that serve your community, serve you? And I think it's important because I would see this in missions. I travel a lot in mission and missionaries. And one thing that is very fatiguing to go to churches and hear is a pastor will get up and say, hey, church, we have an opening in our budget, and the opening budget is the family, the Jones family. The Jones family have come off the field, and unfortunately, he hasn't really been faithful to his wife, and so we had to pull his support. So Y'all make sure. So you be praying for that family now and different things. And then after church, a little chitter chatter of, I can't believe it, man. We invested all that money into that couple and here's what they're doing. And I understand the fact of being disappointed, but here's my follow-up question I immediately ask. When is the last time you prayed for that guy individually? When did your church specifically read what was going on in his life and his prayer letters, and you were bringing his name? Now, you can say how disappointed you are, and that's fine. But let's not go ahead and start looking around and start throwing up our arms of how no one loved Jesus and how they can't stay faithful to the Lord. If it will be over your kneeling body that this is happening. You're calling them out before God so that when it happens, it is a double hurt because you have been lifting them up before prayer. And I see the same thing with our police force as well. How hypocritical for me to talk about how horrible that I feel that somebody's being treated and how this is not doing. This is a word for those who have no trust in the police department. Do you pray individually for the officers, your sheriff? I don't care if he has a rap sheet as long as the Mississippi River. It doesn't matter. Do you pray for him? And if it's something that's concerning you that bad, are you praying for him every day? So my tip is, more than a book or anything, I hope that you get your Echo app. That's what I use. I use my Echo app. But my Echo app that has my prayer list. You get your app and you start going and Googling who the leadership is, and you start praying for them on a weekly basis. Aaron, what's your tip?
That's huge. Well, I just want to say, I think your tip is totally biblical because 1 Timothy 2:2, for kings, I exhort therefore all the supplications, prayers, intercession, and giving of thanks be made for all men, for kings and for all that are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. And so I'll even throw this out on your tip, is that maybe us, so we spoke to the police, maybe us as a Black community if we want a peaceable life, we hear the chants, and I'm not making light of them, okay? So no justice, no peace. But what if the word of God is calling us to have peaceable lives by actually holding these people up in prayer? So I like your tip. So I'm going to go throw one out there. It's going to be a little less biblical, but it's going to be if you ever listen to Emmanuel Acho with his uncomfortable conversation with a Black man, he has a YouTube video. So I'm trying to get away from books because I know everybody's not always a reader. And so sometimes it's like a YouTube video would be way more helpful to you than giving you the book cast, which is like a couple hundred pages. So Emmanuel Acho's episode 9 of Uncomfortable Conversation with a Black Man. I will try to put it in the show notes, but he has a conversation with the Petaluma police and just talks with them. And he even asked the police, how many Black people do they even know? When was the last time they had a conversation with a Black man? And it's an interesting conversation. Once again, I believe Emmanuel Acho is a Christian. I just finished his brother's book, Sam Acho, and so they were raised in a Christian home. But it's not necessarily a straightforward Christian thing. So, of course, I can't say everything Emmanuel Acho does is godly, and I put my full endorsement on it. But I do believe his uncomfortable conversation with the Black man have been helpful. But episode 9 specifically, when he had his conversation with the police, I thought it was a good conversation.
Great. I've been listening to a couple of his, but I hadn't listened to that one. Anton, what's your view? Your tip?
Mine actually, half of it is what you said.
Okay.
That was my if you were a more liberal or a person who struggled with police. My other tip, which was for I would say the more conservative, was that I think we have to get to a place of something we can agree on, and whether or not you are certain police shootings, whether it be Freddie Gray, Philando Castile, any of the cases, whether or not you believe that person was a criminal and something bad happened, I would encourage you to pray for their families, because no matter what you believe, somebody lost a son,
right,
and somebody lost a brother. And I would encourage you, a lot of these, their names are public. So I'd encourage you to take time and pay for the individual family, because again, even if you felt that even by like a death penalty or any other altercation or something like that happens where someone dies, you still have to understand the trauma of all the other people involved that honestly, to the best of our knowledge, didn't do anything. And I think that helps create an environment where we can, again, go back to seeing people as individuals and things we can agree on.
Oh, that's powerful.
Hey, I appreciate all the tips and the tools, and we Thank you so much for hearing us out. Typically, we don't flesh out a topic to this extent, but we want to make sure that we were abundantly clear in the description and how we handled a very polarizing and sensitive topic about the reality of police brutality. We thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, we encourage you to email us at aburdenforthetimes@gmail.com or contact us on one of our social media platforms, Instagram, and also on Facebook page. You can contact us there. Both of us have the handle of Burden for the Times. And so we hope that you join us next time.